So they asked me to park cars for the Christmas music night. I can't understand why. I asked my wife one time, I was singing, and I asked her, I said, how do you think that sounds? And she said, it always amazes me how people that didn't grow up in a Christian home can be so tone deaf. Okay, if you want to know the truth, ask your wife. Okay, Judges chapter 7, I'll be in Judges chapter 7 today. My question to you is, are you being used of God the way that God wants to use you? Are you being used of God the way God wants to use you? Don't think that because you're in Bible college or the academy here at a good church, that automatically you're, you're already being used of God. We see here a history, and it's the history of Gideon. All right, so let me read the first 7 verses of chapter 7, and then we'll get right into it. It says there in chapter 7, verse 1, Then Jerubbaal, who is Gideon, and all the people that were with him rose up early and pitched beside the well of Harod, so that the host of the Midianites were on the north side of them by the hill of Moreh in the valley. And the Lord said unto Gideon, The people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, My own hand hath saved me. Now therefore go to, proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, Whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilead. And there returned of the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. And the Lord said unto Gideon, The people that are yet too many, bring them down into the water, and I will try them for thee there. And it shall be that of whom I say unto thee, This shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee. And of whomsoever I say unto thee, This shall not go with thee, the same shall not go. So he brought down the people unto the water, and the Lord said unto Gideon, Every one that lappeth of the water with his tongue as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself. Likewise every one that boweth down upon his knees to drink. The number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men, but all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, By the 300 men that lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand, and all the other people go every man unto his place. Look at verse 16. And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand with empty pitchers and lamps within the pitchers. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your love for us. I ask, Lord, that you bless now. Today, as we look at this, Lord, I ask that you give wisdom, and this is your word, and I ask, Lord, then please, that you would influence people. If there's something that needs to be changed, we do that and decide that we're going to do what you ask us to do. We're going to be obedient, and we're going to be part of the people who are used by you. Lord, I ask that you bless now in Jesus' name. Amen. The things in the Old Testament pertain to us in lots of different ways, but Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians that these things happened unto them for our admonition. The Bible says this. So we're to look at these Old Testament things and say, what can we learn from it? The word admonition simply means authoritative counsel or warning. All right, so we're to look at this history of Gideon, and we're to receive the warning. We're to receive the authoritative counsel. There's something that God wants us to see through this, that either we say, that's a good thing for me to do, or I'd better stay away from that. I don't want to do that. Okay, so that's what we want to explore today. Only a small percentage of the people that showed up actually ended up being used of God here. I think there were 20,000 people initially, 22,000. Actually, there were 22,000 that returned, and verse 3 tells us that 10,000 remained. So if we do the math there, how many people then were total? It'd be 32,000 people there. So there were 32,000 people that were there of the Israelites to go up against the Midianites. Right? Now we're talking about battle. Right? We're not talking about from a distance. We're talking about hand to hand. We're talking about them having to destroy an enemy by sword or by any means possible and incapacitate them. And this is what they're facing. And so 32,000 people came, and they were going to destroy the Midianites. Apparently they believed that the Lord was going to save them through the hand of Gideon. It could have been anybody that went with Gideon. Anybody could have gone there. When it was cut down, then 10,000 people left. If we do the math there, 1/3 of the people remained. So when the first doing away with, it was only 1/3. That's 33% of the people remained. Of those 10,000, only 300 after the water. So if we look at all of that, 1% of the people that went there were actually used of God. That's 1 out of 100. I wonder if that percentage doesn't carry through even today. That 1 of 100 Christians actually get used the way that God wants them to use. He wants to use them. I wonder if that isn't the case. If that's the case, I would ask you, would you like to be that 1 out of 100? Would you like to do that? You think that your life would count and be purposeful if you were that way? Well, there's a certain number of things I think that we can get an admonition from in this history that helps us with that. And let's look then at these people. Let's look at how the Lord cut this down and look at their characteristics and learn from this. The Lord in his omniscience here knows which ones would not pass the test. He knew that. When the Lord looked down on that army, he saw much of what he could not use. When he looks down on all of you here, what does he see? He looks on me, what does he see? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. And we're going to learn from this. The Lord knows. And he could not do what he wanted to do for the nation of Israel with that many people. He had to cut it down. It's really amazing. Just because they were willing didn't make them used of God. Let me repeat that. Just because they were willing to be there doesn't mean that they were used of God. When they came there obviously with the intention, okay, good intentions, but they didn't have what it took. Okay, they didn't pack the gear, if you will. There were reasons for that. When the Lord looked down, again I say, he saw something that he could not use. What did the people have? They had the promise of victory. Look at verse 16 of chapter 6. And the Lord said unto him, Surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man. So Gideon had the promise that he was going to be victorious in this battle. No question about it. It's just that there were certain people that were able to see that battle, and there were some people that were able to see that victory, and other people were not. So what made the difference? Some people simply don't pass the test. There's some things that we need to understand in life, that's how it is. In life, there are tryouts sometimes. Sometimes you make it, sometimes you don't. In life, sometimes you have to pass a test. That's true for anything at all. In the military service, it's true you have to pass the test. Some people do and some people don't. And that's a fact of life. Now, either you bring yourself up to the point where you can pass that, or you don't. That's life, okay? We don't change the test to cater to people. The Lord has also a spiritual test. And he looks down, he wants to test you. He wants to see if you're worthy. If you're going to be one of those 300 out of the 32,000. Majority of the people ended up going back home. Majority of the people did not have what it took to continue on and to see the Lord do great things. The Bible says in 2 Timothy chapter 2, starting in verse 19, it says this, Nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, The Lord knoweth them that are his, and let every one that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity. But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and of silver, but also of wood and of earth, and some to honor, and some to dishonor. If a man therefore purge himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified and meet for the master's use, and prepared unto every good work. So, there were some things that God saw that he said, this person, I can't use them. They need to get out of here. If they don't leave, I can't do what I'm going to do. Now, that's kind of a hard, to use an old cliche, pill to swallow for some people. The truth of the matter is, God could not do what he wanted to do with that many people. So among them, there was an iniquity. There was something among them that made it dishonorable in the eyes of God and unfit to be used of God. And it is, unfortunately, something that many of us are guilty of. Let's think about how wonderful it would have been to be part of those 300. All right, let's think about it for a second. Put yourself back then. I don't know. I always in my mind, your mind's eye considers these things. I always see it as being dusk. I don't know why, but just kind of maybe either real early in the morning, either the sun is coming up or it's going down. And they have the advantage, actually, and we'll get to that in a minute. And they are looking to go. Now, there's a certain, when you're facing something that you're not sure about its outcome, okay, there's nervousness associated with that, right? Like when you get up here and preach, it's like that, okay? Or if you're going to face a competitor in sports or certainly in warfare. And so there's a measure of uncertainty, okay? okay? And I can imagine the sentiment. If you put yourself there for a second, being there and hearing the sounds, and there's a quietness, there's a hush kind of maybe. And it's about to get violent in a minute. But there's a hush, and there's just a quietness before that time. And it's a time of reflection, it's a time of thinking. Most of the time, I don't want the hush, I just want to get into it. But there is that time, and they're waiting, and they're going through this test, and it was necessary to go through this test. But how amazing would it have been to be one of the 300? God told them, if you look at verse 16 of chapter 7 there it says, and he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand with empty pitchers and lamps within the pitchers. Okay, so there were 3 things there that kind of show for us, or are symbolic for us about people who do get used. So they had these pitchers, right? What was that pitcher? Again, I imagine it being maybe a clay, right? And it was just, obviously you can break it, so it wouldn't have been made out of anything that could not be broken. And so it would just be a clay pitcher. It was just a typical pitcher. It was maybe used, a lot of people say, to draw water out of a well with. Okay, it was just something you would dip in there and grab something. It's just a container. And the significance of the pitchers isn't what it could contain. The significance of that pitcher, and this is a very important point, is when it was broken. If the pitcher had remained intact, it could not be used. It wasn't until it was broken that the light shined forth. There's something that we need to understand, is that these 300 men are symbolic of where God wants to bring us in our life. He wants to break you and refashion you. So the job of God is, that's what he does. Okay? If you're intact, it doesn't work. If you remain the way that you are, if you remain unmoldable in the hands of the potter, then he cannot use you. There's a time for breaking. There's a time for that. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 3:3, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up. That breaking process is necessary. If you are an individual here and you vaunt yourself up as an individual and aren't willing to sacrifice, you can't be used. When we got dropped off into basic training, one of the first things they did, and I could make this kind of humorous, but I'm trying to bring out a point, was they broke us down. First thing they did was take off all of our hair. Now, you wouldn't think that that's that big of a deal. Now, for you ladies, that would be a big deal, obviously. But thankfully, they don't do it for them, I don't think. But they cut off all our hair. So we all looked the same. All of us were bald, absolutely no hair whatsoever. And they did the haircut very quickly. I was amazed. I was the one, I remember at that time, that had to sweep up all of the hair. And there was a big mountain of hair there. And they would do it quick. They would put our heads down there and they would go like this. And it was quick. And you were done and you had absolutely no hair. They take your clothes. You have a uniform issue that you're given. Everybody looks the same. Everybody's bald. Everybody wears green. Everybody looks exactly the same. You're no longer an individual. You are now forced to be part of a team. And you're built up that way. And they don't make it easy for you, and they don't flatter you in the least. Okay? They give you, to us, there were, most of the titles they gave us were of feminine persuasion. Okay? They call us ladies and all the rest of it. It wasn't something, they weren't trying to be generous. They weren't trying to be flattering whatsoever. They were trying to break us down. They were trying to see what we could handle. They were trying to see how we were going to take that. They were trying to see if we were willing to sacrifice for a greater cause. But you understand this exactly. Now, you might be able to say, well, yeah, of course, because when the bullets start flying, you have to be able to die one for another. See, the thing about soldiering is that many people think that it's easy to sit back here and argue and banter about the political reasons for warfare, but the person that's involved in that is just trying to stay alive. He and his friends. He's not thinking about the political ramifications of the war. I'm just trying to stay alive. There are other people that think about that, because that requires sacrifice. It requires you giving yourself over. And many times God will take things away. Many times God will disrupt your plan, and he's trying to break you. And what people do, unfortunately, is resist that breaking. Remember this. God does not use anything he does not first break. I mean, he doesn't break anything he does not intend to use. It's very, very important that we understand that. In fact, he rejects things that are not broken. We think the other way around, don't we? We think that something broken is useless. But God looks at something broken and sees something that he can use. Jeremiah 31 says, and it shall come to pass, 31:28, and it shall come to pass that like as I have watched over them to pluck up and to break down and to throw down and to destroy and to afflict, so will I watch over them to build and to plant, saith the Lord. What did David say? The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart. O Lord, thou wilt not despise. It's the broken heart that God uses. It's the broken life. And of course, Christ is our best example, being broken on the cross for us. You are not important in and of yourself, and you're not important intact. You're only important to God when you're broken. So ask yourself, have I resisted this? Has there been that time where God was trying to do something in my life and I fled from it? I didn't want it. Or I asked God why. God doesn't need to tell you why. Let me influence you with this thought. God doesn't have to tell you why. He could do what he wants to do with you, and you have no right to ask why. Why? Because he wants to. End of story. So what do you need to do? You need to live with it. You need to understand and get to the point maybe that you'll be thankful for that. This breaking, we resist it. But these people, they and I think this breaking of the pitcher is symbolic of that. And it wasn't until the pitcher was broken, and these men that had that the light could shine forth. The idea of that light, of course, is the light of understanding and truth. People that are broken have more of an understanding of truth than people that are not broken. There's at times, and I wouldn't say that I'm that important for God to have broken me that much. I'm not. But there have been times where I felt very insecure. I felt I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what to do. The next step was not there. All I saw was light a few inches in front of me, and that's all. All I knew sometimes was I have to get up and read the Bible and pray, and that's what I did. I didn't know anything else. We have our lives patterned out, and thus far in your life, probably it's been all very structured for you. But there's going to come a time where you're going to branch out there, and you're not going to know. You're not going to know what to do. And it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, it's going to test your mettle, it's going to test your character. And if you will suffer it and allow it, then God will make something out of you. But if you resist it, then you'll be one of those 99% that went the other way. So Christians who submit to God's breaking are more useful to God. And they have a better understanding. They have a better realization. You see, when the Lord is breaking, I know I said this, but let me expand a little bit. When he does that in your life, he has lots of different ways of doing it. The Bible all of a sudden becomes a lifeline. It's no longer just a nice thing to, I'm trying to keep myself awake through this. Oh, I'm sorry, Lord, for falling asleep again through my Bible reading. All of a sudden, the Bible becomes a lifeline for you. You've got nothing else. You've got nothing else. And at those times, you will find the Bible sufficient, like you've never found it before. And these trumpets, why trumpets? It's a call to battle, is what that is. Trumpets summon people. They announce things. Herald uses a trumpet. And so trumpets are used for battle. It's used for an assembly. There's going to be a trumpet sounded when Christ comes again. So this is the idea of trumpets, this a willingness to assemble, the willingness to go forth and to battle and to sacrifice and to pronounce things. This is what these things symbolize, and this is what people get to understand that the other 99% or the other 31,700 did not. Unfortunately, the majority of people don't see that. Why do Christians that grow up in a Christian home fall away? Because they never see God really work. They resist the brokenness, and they don't want it. They don't want it. You like to have your life all planned out, don't you? You like to have it. Maybe you ladies say to yourself, I'm going to marry a missionary, and I'm going to go and be a missionary in the mission field. But what if it doesn't happen? It's your plan. What if it's not God's plan? Many times he's going to take your plan and say, that wasn't my idea, that was your idea. Whatever the case may be. Are you willing to be that 300? Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to accept that breaking? So, again I say, what were some of the things that kept these majority of these soldiers willing to go to battle from actually getting to the point where they're used of God in this way? First one we see in verse 3. There are really just two things. That's it. And I suppose maybe we can gather some more things, but I'm just going to keep it real simple. Two things. Look at verse 3, chapter 7, verse 3. There it says, now therefore go to, what were the first people? What characteristics did they have that when God looked down there, they saw, I can't use them. Now therefore go to, proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from the Mount Gilead. And there returned of the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. I suppose if the averages are this way, 2/3 of people are afraid. You're afraid. What produces that fear? What are people afraid of? Let's ask that. Let's explore that. What is fearful about being used of God? Why are people afraid? Well, what were they afraid of here? Well, they're afraid of their life, wasn't it? Okay, if you're going to go to battle and there's a person there, let's face it, in a war situation, okay, it's either me or you. Either you're going to take away my life or I'm going to take away yours. And that's how it's going to end up. One of us is going to be dead, wallowing in our own blood, and we're going to be dead. And one of you is not. And that's what it boils down to, all right? Do I have what it takes to take your life away from you, or you have what it takes to take your life away from me? That's what it boils down to. Now, we've not been confronted with that. However, it does produce fear, doesn't it? Because we like our life. Our life is dear to us. We want our life intact. And fear then results from us not having our own life. But what did Jesus say in Luke 9:62? And Jesus said unto him, no man, having put his hand to the plow and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of God. All of you have put your hand to the plow, but I wonder how many of you are looking back. I wonder how many would say, well, it's almost like I'm going to go through that door, but I'm going to keep my foot in the door just in case. I don't want it to lock on me. You see, it's a difference. There's a difference between somebody that would step out for the Lord and throw away the key and lock the door, and I can't go back. And there's another person that, like I said, puts a little doorstop in there just in case. What did Elisha do? Elijah came, threw his mantle on Elisha. What did Elisha do? He took his oxen, killed them, he made an altar out of the plow, and he sacrificed on that. What does that tell you? Could Elisha go back to his old life? Nope. He got rid of the oxen. He got rid of it. He was done with it. He was done. What have you done to show God that you don't plan to go back to whatever he might have had for you? Or you're going to go on for the Lord and you're not going to go back. And if it means, if to go from here and forward from the Lord means me losing all these things, then so be it. I'm not talking to people who aren't serious. And what did God know that the other men would have feared? Okay, let's go back to verse 19 of chapter 6. Gideon went in and made ready a kid and unleavened cakes of an ephah of flour and flesh he put in a basket. And he put on the broth and pot and brought it out to him under the oak and presented it. And the angel of God said unto him, take the flesh and the unleavened cakes and lay them upon the rock and pour out the broth, and did so. And the angel of the Lord put forth the end of the staff was in his hand and touched the flesh of, no, that's the wrong chapter, I'm sorry. Verse 19, yeah, I'm in chapter 7. So Gideon and the 100 men that were with him came unto the outside of the camp at the beginning of the middle of the watch, and they had but newly set the watch, and they blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers and were in their hands. And the 3 companies blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers and held the lamps in their left hands and the trumpets in their right hands to blow withal. And they cried, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. They stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the host ran and cried and fled. So they knew that these people, that is the 22,000 that left, would have feared the enemy, and they would not have blown the trumpet. You see, once you blow the trumpet, let's put ourselves there. You have to put yourself there to see what I'm saying. If you're in defilade, you wouldn't know that word. If you're in, if you're hidden, all right, and they don't see you, we like to do the sneak attack, right? So I don't want you to see me. I want to put a round in your, kill you, okay, without you seeing me. But once I blow that trumpet, I've announced my presence, see? So what these men were doing is they didn't have a sword in one hand and, an M60 in the other. They didn't have those things. They had a pitcher in one hand and they had a trumpet in the other. So what were they going to do? Okay, Lord, so you want me to sit here and blow this trumpet? The enemy is going to know that we're here. I don't have anything in my hand to defend myself. You see? they would have been fearful. They wouldn't have blown the trumpet. They wouldn't have wanted to do so. So what is this? These are people that lack faith. What did Paul say? I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, but it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone to believe. So giving the gospel, that's just an example. Are we afraid to do it? Once you give the gospel, you're blowing the trumpet. I'm a Christian. At that point, then, you're going to open yourself up to whatever. Are you willing to do that? You have to admit in your flesh you're not. So they would have feared being found out. They would have feared the enemy. They would also, of course, fear for their lives. We talked about that. But Jesus said in Matthew chapter 10, verse 39, "He that findeth his life shall lose it, and he that loseth his life for my sake shall find it." Most of the time, God doesn't ask us to die for him. Most of the time, he asks us to live for him. And if you're not willing, it's easy to say, "I'll die for you," and we're not in that situation. But it's not so easy to say, "I'll live for you." So they were fearful maybe of the enemy. They were fearful for their own lives. What else could have produced fear? They would have feared maybe that they were not adequate, and they would not have pursued. God knew that, and they knew that it was in the heart of these men. That's why he told them to go home. Chapter 8, verse 4, "And Gideon came to Jordan and passed over, and he and the 300 men that were with him faint, yet pursuing them." All right, they would not have maybe been adequate. What do we mean by that? Have you ever been faint in pursuing? Have you ever had to stretch yourself beyond your limits? And this is true physically, maybe it's true mentally. I don't know. You don't think that you can do it, but you keep going, maybe that, and this would be true, that extra mile, right? If you ever run maybe a half a marathon or whatever, and you get to the wall there, are you going to keep going? Are you going to keep doing another mile? Okay? I can remember the first time that I can remember really stretching myself physically. We were in a soccer game, and it was one of those games. I was playing right wing. And it was one of those games where the ball just happened to go to me, it seemed like, every single play. So I'm having to go up the sidelines and try to cross the ball I was so tired. I think I was, 10, 11 years old maybe. And I was absolutely, completely exhausted. And the guy that was playing defense against me, we were kind of looking at each other, and I know what he was thinking. I hope they don't give you the ball again. And so, but it happened again. I got the ball again. I can remember myself, I can't take another step. I was winded. I thought, I cannot take another step. I can't do it. And I can remember doing it. I remember thinking to myself, I can stretch myself a little bit further. And you say, what's the big deal? Well, for a 10-year-old, that was important. Because I saw that I can do more than I think I can do. But that's true. And it's good for us to stretch ourselves physically because we see that. It's good for us to stretch ourselves mentally. I don't think that I can take this and succeed. But you do it anyway. You stretch yourself. You push yourself. You have that's something inside you that says that. These people didn't have it. God knew that they were going to have to be faint yet pursuing. And these 22,000 didn't have it. So he said, I can't use you. You're going to have to pursue when you're faint, and you don't have it. You don't pack the gear there. So I can't use you. Matthew 5:16, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." Keep going, keep going. And their fear also came not only from fearing the enemy, fearing their lives, fearing that they were inadequate, but also from an improper spirit. You have to understand that here the Midianites were in a valley. So that means that the Israelites were at a high ground. They were at the high ground, and they had water. They were by a well. Now, if you know anything about soldiering, it's best to take the high ground. It's very difficult to take the high ground. It's best if you establish the high ground. Okay, it's better to defend downward than it is to have to attack upwards. Okay, it takes a lot of life, and it takes a lot of courage to take a hill. Okay, and to go upwards. But they had the advantage. They had the element of surprise. Look at verse 1, chapter 7. "Then Jerubbaal, who was Gideon, and all the people that were with him rose up early." So they had the element of surprise. They rose up early. They had a supply of water. Where were they? They were at the well of Harod. So they had a supply of water. They had the high ground. The Midianites were in the valley. And they had seen God work already. They put out the fleece. They saw that the fleece was wet when everything else was dry, and the opposite was true. So they had advantages. But they didn't see it that way. These 22,000 that went home, they didn't see it that way. Instead, they feared. Even though they had the advantage, even though we as Christians would have the Lord backing, still yet there is fear. But Paul says in 2 Timothy chapter 1, God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Jesus also said in Matthew 10:28, "Fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both body soul and body, in hell. Many of us are guilty of being fearful. Shouldn't we be more afraid of not doing God's will and what the repercussions might be? And then the second thing, not only fear, but very simple. What else can keep us from being used of God? What did the other people have? So some of them were fearful. 2/3 of them gone. And then they went to a body of water. Some of the people lapped, and some of them, I guess, put their face down in there to drink. There was a difference here. Look at verses 5 and 6. There it says, "So he brought down the people unto the water, and the Lord said unto Gideon, Everyone that lappeth of the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself, and likewise everyone that boweth down upon his knees to drink. And the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men, and all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water." I think that it could be summed up for this. They were just lazy. They were lazy. They weren't able to stay vigilant. What is the characteristic of a lazy person? If you're lazy, you can't be used of God the way God wants you to. What are the characteristics? They're selfish. These people that put their head down there, they were no longer vigilant when they put their head down, and so they weren't concerned about others. They weren't concerned about security anymore. They weren't concerned about these things. They weren't quiet. They weren't careful. They weren't vigilant. Their head was down. It wasn't up. The Bible says in Ephesians 5, "So then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise." All right, so we have to walk circumspectly, pay attention. And paying attention and being vigilant takes work. Being vigilant takes work. And people aren't willing to put that work into it. And so they were selfish. There was another characteristic of a lazy person. There was a lack of restraint. They took all the water they can get in the quickest way. Verse 6 there it says, and so the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men, but all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water. The point is this. They were going to go there and they were going to get as much water as they could, as fast as they could, and it didn't matter the security, it didn't matter what was going on around. They were going to take care of number one. That's a lazy person. Jesus said, "Think not that I am come to destroy." So the Lord, of course, wasn't that way. He gave of himself. And so we should follow the example of the Lord. I've got to kind of go through this, but it has been said, and I quote this is from somebody. "The 300 men who satisfied their thirst in the most expeditious manner, by this sufficiently indicated their spirit and alacrity to follow Gideon," or promptness, readiness to follow Gideon in his dangerous enterprise, while the rest showed their love of ease, self-indulgence, effeminacy, and want of courage. They were lazy. God can't use a lazy person. He can't use a fearful person. These men had these characteristics. God, when he saw that whole huge army, he saw, I can't use them, they're fearful. I can't use them, they're lazy. If I got to do it with 2 people, but there were 300, okay? Could there have been less? Yeah, God could have done it with nobody. He could have used a rock to do it. He could have used one person. It could have been just Gideon. But there were 300 people that at least took part in that, and they were able to see a great victory that they would go home and tell other people about, that they could give testimony to, that the other people could not. Now, I would ask you again, what do you want to be? You want to be used of God that way or not? Are you fearful sometimes? Sometimes are you just lazy and you just give in sometimes to self-indulgence when you should not? When God looks down and sees, does he see you as the 1% that he can use? Or are you unfortunately part of the 99% that he cannot? Let's pray. You stand, please.